She woke up laughing. That was the strangest part. The room looked the same. The moonlight on the floor, the curtains breathing with the night wind, the familiar smell of old wood and dust. Her blanket was warm. Her eyes were heavy. Everything felt like a dream that hadn't decided to end yet. Then the mattress shifted. Not gently, not naturally. Something cold wrapped around her ankle. She tried to scream, but her voice stayed inside her chest, frozen there, as a tall shadow unfolded beside the bed. Red eyes opened in the dark, patient and knowing, as if they'd been waiting for this exact moment all her life. Dracula did not rush. He never does. He leaned close and whispered her name with perfect certainty, because he had always known it. And when he pulled her from the bed, she finally understood the truth that would haunt her forever. This was not a dream. It was an invitation, and she was already too awake to refuse. The house had learned her breathing. Every floorboard knew the rhythm of her steps. Every wall carried the quiet echoes of her childhood laughter, her whispered prayers, her sleepless nights. Nothing in that room should have felt unfamiliar. And yet, when Mara opened her eyes, the darkness felt alert. She lay still, listening. The clock on the wall read 11:58 p.m. The red numbers glowed faintly, unmoving, as if time itself had decided to wait. Moonlight spilled to the thin curtains, painting pale shapes across the wooden floor. Her bed creaked softly when she shifted, the sound loud in the silence. She told herself it was just another dream. Mara had always dreamed vividly. Since she was small, her sleep had been crowded with images. Forests that breathed, voices that knew her name, shadows that lingered too long in doorways. Her grandmother used to say some children walked too close to the other side. Mara had laughed at that. Tonight, laughter felt impossible. She tried to roll onto her side, to pull the blanket tighter around her shoulders, but her foot brushed against something cold. Not the floor, not the bed frame. Cold like stone left in moonlight. Her breath caught. She pulled her foot back instinctively, heart racing now, fully awake. The cold followed, slowly, deliberately. Her blanket shifted. The mattress dipped at the edge of the bed, as if something, had sat down without permission. "Mama," she whispered. The word vanished into the air, swallowed whole. The room seemed to darken, shadows thickening in the corners where moonlight should have reached. The temperature dropped, raising goosebumps along her arms. Her body refused to move, caught between sleep and terror. Then she saw him. At first, only his outline, tall, impossibly still, rising beside her bed like a shadow pulled upward by unseen hands. His shape was wrong for the room, too large, too precise, as if he had been waiting for the space to be empty enough to enter. Red eyes opened, not glowing wildly, not raging. Calm, ancient, certain. Mara's heart hammered so hard she was sure it would give her away. "This isn't real," she thought desperately. "I'm dreaming." The figure leaned closer. Moonlight touched his face, revealing skin pale as marble, sharp features carved by time rather than age. Dark hair framed his face perfectly, untouched by disorder or haste. He smelled faintly of cold earth and something older, something that had never known warmth. "Dreams," he said softly, his voice smooth and low. "Do not know your name." Her blood turned to ice. He knew it. "Mara." Her lips parted, but no sound came out. The air felt heavy, pressing against her chest, stealing her breath. She tried to scream, to thrash, to wake herself, but her body obeyed nothing except fear. Dracula smiled. It was not cruel. It was patient. "You've been calling to me for years," he said, almost kindly. She shook her head weakly. Tears blurred her vision. I never." "You did," he interrupted gently. "In your dreams, in your loneliness, in the quiet moments when the night felt too large." His hand moved then, long fingers, cold, elegant. They wrapped around her ankle. Mara gasped as the cold seeped into her skin, deeper than temperature, deeper than touch. It felt like memory being stolen. "Please," she managed to whisper. "I'll wake up. I promise." Dracula tilted his head, studying her as if she were something rare. "You already have," he said. With one smooth motion, he pulled. The blanket slid away. Her body followed, weightless and helpless as she was drawn toward the edge of the bed. Her fingers clawed at the sheets, nails scraping uselessly against fabric. The floor rushed up beneath her bare feet. Icy, unforgiving. She stood, not by choice. Dracula rose to his full height before her, towering and composed, his red eyes never leaving her face. Outside, somewhere far away, a dog began to howl. Mara realized then what terrified her most. She could feel everything. The cold, the fear, the pressure of his hand still holding her ankle. This was not a dream. And the night was not over. Dracula leaned down, close enough that she could feel his breath brush her ear. "Come," he whispered, and the house, her safe, familiar home, fell completely silent, as if it had already accepted that she was leaving. Mara did not remember walking. One moment she was standing beside her bed, Dracula's cold fingers still wrapped around her ankle. The next, she was in the hallway, barefoot on the wooden floor, the door to her room standing open behind her like a mouth that had just finished swallowing a word. The house was awake now, not with light, with listening. Every shadow leaned inward. Every wall seemed closer than it had ever been before. The familiar family photographs along the hallway blurred as she passed them. Her mother smiling, her father holding her on his shoulders, moments frozen in warmth that now felt impossibly far away. She wanted to call out. She wanted to run, but Dracula walked beside her, unhurried, his presence bending the space around them. He did not drag her anymore. He did not need to. Her legs moved on her own, trembling but obedient, as if the house itself were guiding her toward the door. "Why me?" Mara whispered. Dracula did not answer at first. They reached the bottom of the stairs. The front door loomed ahead, dark and tall, its glass panes reflecting nothing. No moonlight, no hallway, no child standing there. "Because you listen," Dracula said at last. The words settled inside her like frost. "I don't," she said weakly. "I'm scared of the dark." Dracula stopped. He turned to face her fully, and for the first time she noticed how little he blinked. His eyes were ancient, layered with centuries of observation, of choices made and collected. "And yet," he said softly, "you never close your mind to it." He raised a hand, not threatening, not gentle, and placed 2 fingers lightly against her temple. The touch sent a shock through her body, sharp and cold. Images flooded her mind. Nights lying awake, staring into darkness. Whispers she had dismissed as dreams. A sense of being watched that felt strangely comforting. She staggered back, breath hitching. "Stop." Dracula lowered his hand. "You felt me long before tonight," he said. "You felt the edge of the world and did not turn away." The front door creaked open on its own. Cold night air poured in, carrying the scent of wet earth and leaves. The forest beyond the house stood dense and black, its branches swaying despite the absence of wind. Mara's heart screamed at her to run back, to her parents' room, to her bed, to the life she understood. But her feet did not move. "You won't hurt them," she said suddenly. "My family." Dracula looked at her with something that might have been curiosity. "I have not come for them." The relief was immediate and short-lived. "Then you'll let me go," she said quickly. Dracula smiled faintly. "Not yet." They stepped outside. The door closed behind them with a soft, final click. Mara flinched. The world beyond the house felt wrong. Too quiet, too still. The moon hung low and pale, illuminating the dirt path that led toward the forest. Crickets were silent. Even the trees seemed to hold their breath. She tried to pull away then. Dracula's grip tightened not painfully, but decisively. "Do not fight the night," he said. "It only makes the path longer." Tears slid down Mara's cheeks as they crossed the yard. She looked back once, at the darkened windows of her home, half expecting to see her mother's silhouette, to hear her name called into the night. Nothing happened. The forest waited. As they reached the tree line, Mara felt something change. The air grew heavier. The shadows thickened, no longer cast by the trees, but existing on their own. Dracula stopped again. "This is as far as the house follows you," he said. Her voice shook. "What happens now?" Dracula looked down at her, his red eyes reflecting the moon. "Now," he said, "you choose whether this becomes a memory or a beginning." She stared at him, confused and terrified. "I don't understand." "You will," he replied. A sound echoed from deeper in the woods, a low, distant murmur, like voices speaking just below hearing. Mara felt it pull at her, at something inside her chest she didn't know how to name. Dracula loosened his grip slightly. "Step forward," he said, "or run back." She looked behind her, to the path, the house, the life she knew. Then she looked into the forest, and for the first time, the dark did not feel empty. It felt expectant. Mara took a trembling breath and stepped forward. The trees closed behind her, and the night, at last, truly began. The forest did not feel like a place. It felt like a presence. As soon as Mara crossed the tree line, the air changed texture, thicker, colder, alive in a way that pressed gently against her skin. The moonlight fractured above them, broken into thin silver lines by twisting branches. Roots rose from the ground like veins, guiding her steps without touch. Dracula released her ankle. The sudden freedom startled her more than his grip had. She stumbled, nearly falling, but the ground steadied beneath her feet, firm and unyielding, as if the force itself refused to let her collapse. "You're afraid," Dracula observed calmly. Mara hugged her arms around herself. "Anyone would be." Dracula walked ahead, unhurried, his long coat barely stirring as he moved. "Fear sharpens perception," he said. "It makes truth louder." They followed a narrow path that did not look carved, only remembered. With every step, Mara felt a strange sensation in her chest, like a door slowly opening. She began to hear things. Not clearly, not yet. A rustle that was not wind, a murmur that was not leaves. She stopped abruptly. "Did you hear that?" Dracula turned slightly, watching her with renewed interest. "Yes." Her breath caught. What was it? A greeting. The word made her skin prickle. The forest responded then, softly, collectively. The shadows along the trees deepened, leaning closer, forming shapes that vanished the moment she tried to focus on them. The path curved inward, leading them toward a clearing bathed in dim, unnatural light. "Why does it feel like I've been here before?" Mara asked. Dracula slowed. "Because parts of you have," he said. "In dreams. In moments when sleep thinned the walls." She remembered nights waking suddenly, heart racing, convinced someone had whispered her name. She had always blamed her imagination. Now imagination felt like a lie she told herself to stay safe. They reached the clearing. At its center stood a stone, smooth, dark, ancient. Symbols were carved into its surface, worn down by time yet unmistakably deliberate. The air hummed faintly around it like a held breath. Dracula gestured toward the stone. "Sit." Mara shook her head. "No, that was not a request," he replied gently. The forest agreed. A subtle pressure guided her forward. Not hands, not force, just inevitability. She lowered herself onto the stone, shivering as its cold seeped through her thin nightclothes. Dracula stood before her. "You think I took you," he said, "but you were already standing at the edge." She looked up at him, anger flashing through her fear. "I'm a child." Dracula did not flinch. "You are a threshold." The word echoed inside her. He raised a hand, palm outward, not touching her. The air between them vibrated. Mara gasped as images flooded her mind again, stronger this time. The village at dusk, children laughing, herself standing apart, listening to something no one else heard. She saw nights yet to come, paths through shadow, choices whispered instead of spoken. She clutched the edge of the stone. "Stop. I don't want this." Dracula lowered his hand immediately. The images vanished. The silence that followed was heavy, but respectful. "You misunderstand me," Dracula said quietly. "I do not force what cannot endure." "Then why bring me here?" she demanded. He leaned closer, his red eyes steady, searching. "Because the forest called you," he said, "and because you answered." The clearing shifted, not visibly, but perceptibly. The shadows rearranged themselves, forming a loose circle around them. The murmurs grew clearer now, still indistinct, but undeniably voices. They were saying her name. Mara pressed her hands over her ears. Make it stop. Dracula's expression softened, not with mercy, but with recognition. It will not, he said, but it will change. He stepped back, giving her space. You can leave, he said. The path remains open for now. Her heart leapt. Really? Yes. The relief was overwhelming and confusing. But, Dracula continued, if you leave, you will always hear them. The whispers will follow you into every shadow. You will never sleep without knowing what waits beyond the dark. She swallowed hard. And if I stay? Dracula's gaze drifted to the forest, to the ancient trees that watch without eyes. Then you will learn how to listen without breaking. The whispers grew louder, closer, wrapping around her thoughts like cold water. Mara realized something then, terrifying and undeniable. The forest was not calling her to harm. It was calling her to understand. She looked at the path behind her, then at the stone beneath her, then at Dracula. I don't want to be alone, she whispered. Dracula nodded once. No one who listens ever is. The forest exhaled, and the path behind her began, slowly, to fade. The forest did not rush her. That was the cruelest part. Mara expected something dramatic. Branches closing like jaws, shadows lunging, a sudden loss of breath or light. Instead, the world simply settled. The clearing remained unchanged. The stone beneath her was still cold. Dracula still stood a few steps away, his presence steady, unintrusive. It was as if the night had decided to wait and see what she would do. You said the path would fade, Mara whispered. Dracula inclined his head. It is fading, slowly, as all real choices do. She turned, searching for the trail she had followed into the clearing. It was still there, but thinner now, less certain. The trees leaned inward, subtly rearranging themselves. If she blinked too long, the path seemed to slip like a memory she could not quite hold. Fear bloomed again, sharp and childish. You're trapping me. Dracula did not deny it. I am showing you what happens when hesitation meets truth, he said. The dark does not close doors. It allows them to disappear. The whispers returned, clearer than before. Not words yet. Feelings, curiosity, hunger, patience. They slid through her thoughts without asking permission. Mara pressed her palms against the stone, grounding herself in its cold certainty. Why does it feel like the forest knows me? She asked. Dracula's eyes lifted toward the branches above. Because it does. It has watched you longer than I have. That terrified her more than any threat. He gestured toward the edge of the clearing. Shadows stirred, separating slightly to reveal shapes, vague, half-formed, like silhouettes made of night itself. They are not monsters, Dracula said before she could speak. They are listeners. Like you, the shapes leaned closer, curious but restrained. Mara felt their attention, like fingers brushing the back of her mind. What do they want? She asked. To be acknowledged, Dracula replied. To be understood rather than feared. Her laugh came out broken. That's easy for you to say. Dracula turned to her fully, then his expression grave. You think I was always this? She hesitated. Weren't you? No, he said simply. I was once a child who listened when he should have slept. The admission hung between them, heavy and unexpected. The whisper softened. Mara studied his face, really looked at it this time. Beneath the sharp lines and ancient calm, she saw something restrained, something disciplined. You learned to control it, she said slowly. Dracula nodded. I learned to endure it. He extended his hand, not to grab, not to command. To remain here, he said, you must learn the first lesson. Mara's throat tightened, which is listening without answering. The forest seemed to pulse. Dracula closed his eyes. Sit still, he instructed. Do not speak. Do not resist. Let the night speak to you as it will. Every instinct screamed at her to refuse. Instead, she sat. The whispers surged. Images flooded her senses, not visions, but impressions. Old trees remembering fire. Animals remembering flight. children remembering promises made in the dark. Fear rose in her chest, thick and suffocating. Her hands shook. She wanted to scream, to drown the voices out, to shatter the silence that pressed so close it felt intimate. She didn't. Minutes passed, or hours. Time lost meaning. Gradually, something shifted. The whispers stopped clawing. They settled, organized themselves. The fear did not vanish, but it stopped growing. Mara breathed, slowly, carefully. The forest responded. The shapes at the edge of the clearing eased back, respectful now. The pressure of her head lessened, replaced by a strange clarity, as if the dark had stepped aside to let her see. Dracula opened his eyes. "You did well," he said. She looked up at him, exhausted. "I hated every second." He almost smiled. "That means you are still human." The path behind her flickered, visible again, but faint. "You may leave now," Dracula said. "You will remember this place. You will hear the whispers still, but quieter, manageable." "And if I stay?" she asked. Dracula's gaze hardened slightly. "Then the lessons will deepen, and the night will ask more of you." Mara looked at the path, then at the forest, then at the stone that had held her steady when nothing else could. A terrible realization settled in her chest. Going back would not make her normal again. It would only make her haunted. She stood. Her legs trembled, but held. "I want to learn," she said, "not to be afraid of it." The forest stilled. Dracula inclined his head, acknowledging the choice. "Then understand this," he said. "The dark does not make you cruel." He stepped aside, allowing the clearing to open further. "But it will ask who you are when no one is watching." The whispers returned, soft, expectant, and Mara stepped forward, knowing the night was no longer testing her courage. It was testing her truth. The forest did not celebrate her choice. It simply accepted it. That, Mara would later understand, was how the dark truly worked. It did not reward. It did not punish. It collected. The clearing shifted as she stepped forward. The stone sank slowly into the earth, disappearing as if it had never existed. The circle of trees widened, their branches arching overhead to form a cathedral shadow. The whispers followed her, not louder, not softer, but closer, more precise. She could feel where they came from now. Not mouths, not bodies, memory. Dracula walked beside her again, though she hadn't noticed when he started moving. His presence was steady, anchoring, like a fixed point in a world that refused to stay still. "You're afraid again," he said. Mara nodded. There was no use denying it anymore. "It feels different." "Yes," Dracula replied, "because now you understand what you risk losing." They reached a narrow stream cutting through the forest, its surface black and mirror smooth. Mist curled above it, catching fragments of moonlight. The whispers gathered there, thick as fog. Dracula stopped. "This is where many turn back," he said. "Not because they are weak, but because they see too much." Mara stared into the water. At first, she saw only her reflection, pale, wide-eyed, unmistakably herself. Then the surface rippled. Images appeared. Her bedroom, her mother folding clothes, her father sitting at the table, head in his hands. The sight punched the air from her lungs. "They think I'm gone," she whispered. Dracula watched her closely. "You are." Tears spilled over before she could stop them. "I don't want to leave them." "You did not," he said. "But the night does not ask what you want. It asks what you will carry." The images shifted. Mara saw herself older, standing at the edge of the forest, watching children play in the village without her. She saw nights spent awake, listening to whispers she could never fully share. She saw doors that would never open for her again. Her chest ached. "What does it take?" she asked hoarsely. "To stay?" Dracula gestured toward the stream. "A letting go." The water darkened. "The forest will not take your body," he said. "It will not steal your name, but it will take something quieter." Mara knelt beside the stream, her reflection trembling. "What?" she asked. Dracula's voice lowered. "The certainty that you belong to the daylight." The word struck deeper than fear. She understood then, not fully, but enough. She would still walk, still breathe, still remember, but she would never again feel completely at home among those who slept peacefully through the night. The whispers pressed closer, urging but not demanding. Mara closed her eyes. "I don't want to forget them," she said. Dracula's reply was immediate. "You won't." She reached into the stream. The water was colder than anything she had ever touched, not freezing, but empty. It wrapped around her fingers, sliding beneath her skin like a question searching for an answer. Something loosened inside her chest. Not pain. Release. She gasped as memories surfaced. Not faces, not names, but feelings. The certainty that mornings were safe. The belief that the world would always explain itself. The water accepted them. When she pulled her hand back, it trembled, not from cold, but from understanding. The stream calmed. The whisper softened. Mara stood slowly, her legs unsteady but her mind strangely clear. Dracula studied her. "You have crossed a quiet threshold," he said. "Few do." "Am I like you now?" she asked. Dracula shook his head. "No." Relief washed through her. "You are something else," he continued. Something unfinished. They moved deeper into the forest, the path no longer fading, but forming naturally beneath her feet. Mara noticed details she had missed before. The way shadows curved gently around her, the way the night seemed to pause when she listened closely. She was not in control, but she was no longer lost. They stopped at the edge of another clearing, smaller, darker. "This is where I leave you for tonight," Dracula said. Panic flared. "Alone?" He met her gaze steadily, not unattended. The whispers responded, a low murmur of acknowledgement. "You will sleep," he continued. "You will dream, and the forest will watch." Mara swallowed. "And tomorrow?" Dracula stepped back, already beginning to fade into the darkness. "Tomorrow," he said, "you will wake knowing the night did not take you." His eyes lingered on her a moment longer. "It accepted you." He was gone. The forest closed around her, not threatening, not kind, just present. Mara lay down beneath the trees, her heart pounding, her mind racing. Above her, the branches parted slightly, allowing moonlight to touch her face. She realized something as sleep finally claimed her. The night had not pulled her from bed to claim her. It had pulled her from certainty. And that, she knew, was a loss she would feel for the rest of her life. Mara woke before dawn, not because of a sound, not because of fear, because the forest released her. Her eyes opened slowly, adjusting to a light that was neither night nor morning. The sky above the trees was a muted gray-blue, suspended in a moment that refused to move forward. Dew clung to leaves like hell breath. The whispers were still there, but distant now, folded neatly into the background of her thoughts. She sat up. Her body felt the same. Her hands were small. Her heartbeat was steady. She was still herself. And yet, something essential had shifted. She could feel the forest, its boundaries, its patience, its awareness, like a second sense she hadn't known she was missing. It did not speak to her now. It listened. Dracula stood a short distance away, perfectly still, as if he had always been there. "You slept," he said. Mara nodded. "I dreamed." "Of what?" She searched for the right words. "Of standing in two places at once." Dracula's eyes flickered with interest. Then the lesson held. He stepped closer, stopping just short of her reach. In the dim light, his red eyes were less harsh, more reflective, like embers after a fire has passed. "Will I go home?" Mara asked quietly. Dracula did not answer immediately. "When you step beyond the forest," he said instead, "the world will look unchanged. Your house will stand. Your parents will breathe. The sun will rise." Her heart leapt. "So nothing happened?" Dracula met her gaze. "Everything happened." He raised a hand, not touching her, and the forest responded. The trees parted, revealing the path back. It was clearer now than it had ever been, solid and real, stretching toward the distant outline of her home. "But," Dracula continued, "you will hear what others cannot. You will notice where shadows linger too long. You will know when something listens back." Mara stood slowly. Her legs were steady. "What are you?" she asked him. Not accusing, not afraid. Dracula considered the question. "I am what remains when fear is mastered but never forgotten," he said. "I am the guardian of thresholds." She nodded, understanding more than the words alone explained. "And me?" Dracula looked at her with something unmistakably rare. "Respect. You are a witness," he said, "and a choice." The forest murmured softly, as if agreeing. Mara hesitated. "Will you come for me again?" Dracula's lips curved, not into a smile, but into something gentler. "No," he said, "not unless you call." The truth of that settled deep in her chest. She took a step toward the path, then stopped. "Thank you," she said. Dracula inclined his head. "Do not thank the dark," he replied. "Thank yourself for listening without surrendering." She walked away. With every step, the forest loosened its hold. The whispers thinned. The shadows returned to their proper places. By the time she reached the edge of the trees, the night felt like a memory that refused to fade, but no longer demanded attention. When she opened the front door of her house, the clock read 6:01 a.m. Her mother was asleep at the table, head resting on folded arms. Her father stirred on the couch, eyes opening in confusion and relief when he saw her. "Mara," he breathed, "where did you—" "I was dreaming," she said gently. It was not a lie. Life resumed. School, meals, sunlight, ordinary sounds. But Mara noticed things. How darkness pooled under beds, not threatening, but watchful. How some nights felt crowded with unspoken thoughts. How fear sometimes left quietly when she acknowledged it instead of running. Years later, villagers would whisper about the girl who once disappeared at night and returned different, kinder, quieter, unafraid. And sometimes, when children woke from nightmares feeling watched but unharmed, they would say the dark felt like it was guarding them. Mara never told anyone about Dracula. She didn't need to, because the night no longer pulled her from bed. It waited, and she, now knowing the cost of listening, chose carefully when to answer. If this story stayed with you, remember, some darkness does not seek to consume. It seeks to be understood. Subscribe, leave a like, and share this story with someone who loves cinematic horror and deep suspense. Bat.